John, there is one prospect in this class that I think is the most polarizing in the country in this class, and that is quarterback Arch Manning, who is from obviously Bishop Isidore. Was it actually Isidore Newman? Correct, excuse me,
Yep.
from Louisiana, son of Cooper Manning, who is the brother of Eli, and Peyton Manning, son of Archie Manning. And there's a lot of debate about him, and people like to have really bad hot takes on Arch, right?
Yeah.
And you've got some people that are like, oh, he's number one player in the country, and I was like, oh, I don't think so. And then there's the ridiculous hot takes. Oh, he's not that. If his name wasn't Manning, he wouldn't even be a top 100 player. Somebody even had the audacity to say something as silly as, he's a 3-star kid, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
now we're just being ridiculous, right? But there is sort of an in between on Arch Manning, and I know he's a guy that you guys had some trouble saying, okay, where exactly do you place Arch? And respecting the game, but then also not trying to buy into some of the hype in either direction. So, and just talk to me about what the process was like of evaluating Arch, especially since he's not on the summer circuit where you can see him spinning the ball next to these other guys. What's his body type compared to them? How's the ball come out of his hand compared to these guys? How does he handle the heat? We had you on at Irish Breakdown talking about CJ Carr in the event he was at Nashville, how hot it was, and guys are puking and sweating, and CJ's just dropping dimes, right?
Yeah.
You get to see those type of things. You didn't get to see that with Arch. So just kind of talk about the scenario of where you saw Arch, how you evaluated him, and then also how you settled in on him at number 10. Because I know there's some thoughts of maybe having him higher. There's some thoughts of maybe having him lower. So Arch Manning, how did you handle the conundrum that is evaluating and ranking Arch Manning?
Yeah, the most famous, high school football recruit in the modern era already is going to bring a whole lot of scrutiny and eventually, too much praise and then too many haters on the back end. None of which is his fault, obviously, that goes without saying. But yeah, this was a hard one. There's really no other way to begin that part of the conversation. Of course, on the front end, this is, taking the legacy stuff out because that's obvious, right? And look, that does give you some benefit of the doubt. We talked about data points. All things even, you do trust the bloodlines, the legacy at that position, and the people that are going to be and are around him. In the high floor department, that does
Right.
carry some weight. So let's not use that as a reason to knock him. Let's actually use that as a reason to lift him up.
That's I want to can we focus on that just for a second, because
Yeah.
I like that you said that. I haven't heard anybody say it like that before. People shouldn't knock him because he's a Manning. If anything, I think it's something that you look at and say, okay, there's a level of confidence there. The genes, the bloodline, so to speak. Grandfather, uncles, all great quarterbacks, Hall of Fame quarterbacks. But you also know this is a young man that's lived in the spotlight his whole life, right? He has lived in the Manning. He's going to the same high school that Eli and Arch and his dad went to, and he's still been able to kind of stay above it all, and he's not a guy that's on Twitter all the time and announcing his commitment on ESPN and all the things I mean, look, if anybody could have done the whole, driving up in a limousine to his commitment thing like Jimmy Clausen did back in 2007, Arch Manning is that kid that could have done that, but he's not that. So I like the fact that you did point to the fact that his last name is something that we should say, well, if there's any kind of pedigree or any kind of lineage that we can follow and say that family knows how to produce great quarterbacks, it is the Manning family. And so that's not something that should be held against Arch, which some people on the opposite end of maybe pumping him up too high because of his last name, because of maybe it's more of the clickbait related ranking. Also, people that bang him for it. That's definitely not something that should be held against him for as a prospect.
100%. And I feel for him in that regard. But yeah, I think it should give you benefit of the doubt with him. Not all the benefit of the doubt,
Mhm.
but it should give you some, at least at the surface level. And again, in the high floor department, that's a pretty big box to check on our end. But if you remove yourself from that part of it, there's still a really nice body of work here. This is a 3-year varsity starter, deep playoff runs each year. Yes, it's private school ball in Louisiana. It is not, the inner city New Orleans ball. We understand all of that, but the production has still increased. The winning has still been very, very common under Arch Manning there at Newman High School. And then physically, he has made some strides. He was always tall and lanky. Obviously, again, we know the family build there, not known as the most filled out muscular bunch, but he's starting to come around in that regard. And that was really the first indicator for me. I think he played at about 190 last year. A lot of us watched him on TV. The Berkeley Prep game was one of the bigger games of the TV version of the high school season. And at times he looked pretty good, but running away from Keon Keeley is not fun for everyone. And at times he looked pretty humble athletically in that regard. So coming out off of some of the full game evals we did last year, we said, I wonder if he can get a little bit bigger. And then, of course, as you mentioned, he doesn't do all the Elite 11 and Nike and all that stuff. So you got to go see him. So we did go over to Newman High. And when we're introduced to Arch, it's like I'm looking at Andrew Luck. He's 6'4", 225. And I'm like, this isn't the kid I saw at running around against Berkeley Prep trying to get a dub. This is a bigger, more mature kid. And yeah, we start backtracking there, and you're like, okay, what happened here? Well, he realized that, yeah, athletically he wasn't where he wanted to be. Physically, durability wise, he wasn't where he wanted to be. So he started to make a change. Again, these are all very good signs. So then you start to pair it with the traits we do see from a quarterbacking standpoint. And look, the footwork is excellent. The pocket presence is really good. Ironically enough, the mechanics aren't the best. He throws a good ball and has plenty of power, but he's got a kind of a condensed, a little bit funky motion relative to what you would expect. Again, if you bought into the whole Manning and the name thing. So I actually thought he had work to do mechanically. And so we've seen a little bit of stride from his junior year to this offseason in the limited sample that we've actually seen with him spinning it. And another benefit of the doubt item for Arch for us was they're going to open up that offense. So there's a little bit of projection in there. They're going to allow him to control a lot more of this offense. They're going to go more up tempo, more spread, because they're not as equipped up front as they were over the last few years. So the success of Isidore Newman is going to have a lot to do with Arch Manning, which is what you want. If you're going to play private school ball, put it all on that guy and let him have the opportunity to truly dominate. Think Cam Newton at Auburn, even going to the high school levels. Think of Caleb Williams a couple years ago at Gonzaga in DC. Travis Hunter, the number one from last year at Collins Hill, doing it on both sides of the ball in the Atlanta area. Go dominate in your system or as it expands. So I think Arch is going to have a lot of ahead of him for that. So because of all that, we were like you said, somewhere in the middle where he was in contention for number one, but there were probably too many questions from a competition standpoint, from a mechanical standpoint, for us to give him that nod. But the foundation, the floor is obviously sky high. The increased build, I thought, was a huge marker for him in terms of stacking him up with some of these other top quarterbacks in the class. So you throw that in with the expanding offense, and we kind of gave him some clout in that regard there as well. So he comes in at QB 5 and in the top 10 overall for us. So it's really a back and forth with all these guys. I think the quarterback he's most similar to is actually Dante Moore. So I do think that there's some interesting high floor conversation between those two, but either way, we were going to get crap for it no matter what. We did. We're moving on. It was tough, and it'll probably get tougher this year for Arch. There's really no way around that.
Oh, I just love how ranking a guy 10th is somehow an insult. I mean, it is what it is. But he is ranked number one by Rivals, On3, 247, and then number 2 overall by ESPN.
Yeah, so we're the lowest in the world on Arch Manning at number 10 overall.
I had him lower than that, but I'll say the one thing that I do feel works in his advantage, I think making the decision to go play for Steve Sarkisian at Texas was the best decision I think he could make just from a football standpoint. I can't get into all the other reasons why he might have picked Texas, but just looking at it from a football standpoint, I don't know if there was a better pick for him out there than going to Texas. I think you're talking about someone who has a system that is going to really he's going to thrive in. It's a system that doesn't require a huge arm. Mac Jones doesn't have a huge arm. And he mastered that offense in a way that we haven't seen anyone other than Joe Burrow master an offense in the last 10 years. And he's going to be surrounded by really good players. So I thought, and he's going to get out of the Southeast the SEC where his uncle and dad and both uncles and dad played and his grandfather played. He's kind of, well, actually, he's going to still be in the
They're
SEC,
gonna
but
go there, yeah.
he's getting out of the Southeast region. He's going to be playing in the Southwest at Texas. So for me, that was something that bumped him up a little bit in my ranking because I like you, I think that you have to be able to evaluate where a kid is going if you're going to project how he's going to do at the next level. So I did like the decision for him to go to play for Sarkisian. And I think that's going to be a really good fit
Yeah,
for him.
that said a lot about him too, right? It could have been so easy to go to Georgia, Bama, or even follow the uncles, right? Tennessee or Ole Miss. And then you play into that and you're kind of the savior no matter what. But Texas, that takes a lot of what in this regard, because that's been one of those teams that we kind of, I don't want to say laugh at, but laugh at. Yeah, that's kind of
They
one of
haven't been
those.
good for a while.
Are
Right.
you back or are you just saying it? I think until Georgia won this year, they were kind of in that boat, right? It was like, you haven't been good in a very long time, or elite number one good in a very long time. So I do think it takes a lot of maturity to make the decision that he did, especially with all that scrutiny. And like you said, there's more benefit of the doubt in how he's handled the process as well. He just committed with a tweet. It was his first tweet ever. I think he just said, "Hey, I'm committed to Texas." #hook 'em or something like that, and that was kind of it. I like that. I like that. I think he's going to be businesslike, although everyone around him says he just wants to be a kid, and that's probably true. But he knows what is expected of him, and that he'll basically never be able to meet those expectations. So even to have a chance to come close, he's going to really have to handle things from a business-like manner from the jump, and I think he's already shown a lot of that. So I'm rooting for him. I'd love to see him take a big step as a senior and make it that much harder for us to rank him after the season. And that's kind of what I'm expecting. I do think he's going to play his way into our, number one conversation again.